Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of compelling insights, brilliant research, and your own notes, and give you the shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're plunging into a wildly popular book that really challenges conventional wisdom about happiness and success. We're deep diving into Chapter 1 of Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. The chapter's titled, Don't Try. And we're going to start with a real curveball, actually, because our source material opens with this fascinating figure. Charles Bukowski. Now, this guy is hardly your typical self-help guru. Bukowski was, by his own admission, an alcoholic, a gambler, a self-proclaimed lout. Yet etched onto his tombstone are these two striking words, don't try.
It's an incredibly striking contradiction, isn't it? Especially when you think about how deeply ingrained that common narrative is about success. The one that says it's all about relentless effort, grit, never giving up. So our mission today is really to unpack this paradox. What does not trying truly mean for living a good life, according to this source material? It's definitely going to challenge some core assumptions.
Okay, so let's dive into Bukowski's story then, because the source paints a pretty, bleak picture of his early life. He spent decades as a struggling writer, rejected constantly. His work, often called crude, disgusting, depraved, he toiled away at this dead-end job, filing letters at a post office, drowning in alcohol and self-loathing, apparently often passing out cold, for 30 years. Then, at 50, after this lifetime of failure, a small publisher finally gave him a shot. He famously wrote back something like, I have one of two choices, stay in the post office and go crazy, or stay out here and play at writer and starve. I have decided to starve. He signed the contract, wrote his first novel, Post Office, in just 3 weeks. And then, boom, he went on to become this hugely successful novelist and poet, selling millions. Now, the story we usually tell ourselves, right? The one that fits our neat little cultural narrative is, see, he never gave up. He never stopped trying, always believed in himself, persisted against all odds, and made something of himself. So with that narrative in mind, what on earth does don't try on his tombstone actually signify? Feels like a total paradox. A mindfuck, really.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting. The source material suggests Bukowski's success wasn't born from some fierce determination to be a winner, or, from striving to become a better person in the way we usually think about it. Quite the opposite, actually. It seems it stemmed from his profound acceptance that he was, in his own words, a loser.
Yeah.
From being completely, unflinchingly honest about his failings, especially the parts of himself most of us tried desperately to hide. He wrote from that raw place. His genius, surprisingly, was his comfort with himself as a failure. He never tried to be anything other than what he was. Fame and success didn't magically make him a better person, nor was it by becoming one that he found success. And this insight, it fundamentally challenges that deep-seated assumption we have that self-improvement and success are always linked, or even dependent on each other.
Wow, that's a huge shift from what we're usually told. Our modern culture seems obsessively focused on this almost unrealistic positivity. Be happier, be healthier, be the best, smarter, richer, sexier, more popular, perfect, productive, be amazing, save the planet, all of it. But the source material argues this constant fixation on the positive actually just highlights, maybe even reinforces what you feel you lack. Like if you feel you need to constantly affirm you're beautiful, it's often because deep down you feel you're not beautiful enough already. Or doing those, goofy visualization exercises about being successful, the underlying message is you don't feel successful enough right now.
Precisely. There's that old saying, the smallest dog barks the loudest. A truly confident person, generally, doesn't feel this constant need to prove they're confident. A genuinely wealthy person doesn't usually feel compelled to convince everyone they're rich. You either are or you aren't. And if you're constantly dreaming of something, relentlessly pursuing it, you're often, maybe unconsciously, just reinforcing the reality that you are not that thing yet. We get bombarded with messages to care about everything, new cars, fancy vacations, the latest gadget, better abs, largely because, as the source bluntly states, giving a fuck about more stuff is good for business.
Right.
But giving too many fucks, especially about superficial things, it's just devastating for your mental health. It ties you to the superficial, the fake, makes you chase a mirage.
And this leads us to what the source calls the feedback loop from hell. That phrase alone just grabs you, right?
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is how universally relatable it feels. You get anxious,
Yeah.
and then you get anxious about being anxious.
Yeah.
Or you get angry, and then you get angry about being angry. It's almost like our emotions start, feeding on themselves, creating this downward spiral. Can you unpack that concept a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. This loop, this feeling bad about feeling bad, has become what the author calls a borderline epidemic. It makes so many of us overly stressed, neurotic, prone to self-loathing. Think about it. Maybe in our grandparents' day, if they woke up feeling down, they might just think, well, guess I'm feeling a bit rough today. But hey, that's just life.
Right, time to chop wood.
Exactly. Time to get to work. But now, with consumer culture, social media constantly blasting us with images of everyone else having a grand old time, these, perfect lives, constant achievement, we can't help but feel there's something inherently wrong with us for just having normal negative emotion. We feel bad about feeling bad, and that is the trap. This is exactly why not giving a fuck becomes so key. By not giving a fuck that you feel bad, you basically short-circuit that whole loop. You essentially say, okay, I feel like crap right now, but who gives a fuck? It's just a feeling. And suddenly, almost like magic, you stop hating yourself for it. You disengage from that layer of self-judgment.
Okay, so if trying to force feeling better often makes us feel worse, what's the actual alternative then? The source introduces this concept it calls the backwards law. And it goes, the desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. That sounds incredibly profound, but also kind of like a philosophical riddle. Can you break that down?
It really is profound, and it totally flips conventional wisdom on its head. Think about it. The more you desperately chase happiness, the lonelier and more afraid you can actually become no matter who's around you. The more you desperately want to be rich, the poorer and more unworthy you might end up feeling, regardless of your actual bank balance. There's that quote from the existential philosopher Albert Camus, something like, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of.
What?
You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life." And this is essentially what "don't try" boils down to.
Yeah.
It's not about apathy, it's about a different kind of engagement altogether.
This sounds, well, incredibly liberating in a way.
Yeah.
But I can see how for many it might also sound like just giving up, becoming passive. Like if I stop giving a fuck about my goals, saving for that car, getting in shape when I just achieved nothing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the source says not giving a fuck works in reverse.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that part?
Exactly. It's truly backwards, in a way. If pursuing the positive often generates a negative, then pursuing the negative, paradoxically, often generates the positive. Think about it. The pain you willingly pursue in the gym, pushing your limits, that results in better all-around health and energy. The failures you experience in business, those are often what lead to a much deeper understanding of what's really necessary to succeed. Being open with your insecurities rather than hiding them. Paradoxically, that often makes you more confident and charismatic around others. The difficult pain of honest confrontation. That's often what generates the greatest trust and respect in your relationships. Suffering through your fears and anxieties instead of running from them is what allows you to build real courage and perseverance. The source basically argues that everything truly worthwhile in life is won by surmounting the negative experience that comes with it. Any attempt to escape the negative, to avoid it or squash it down, it just backfires. The avoidance of suffering is a form of suffering itself. So if you're able to not give a fuck about the pain itself to move through it without that layer of judgment, you become surprisingly unstoppable. In our lives, it's often the fucks not given, those moments we choose to push past fear or discomfort that define the biggest shifts.
Like a major career change.
Exactly. Or a spontaneous decision, taking a leap of faith. It means staring down life's most terrifying, difficult challenges and still taking action.
Okay, so we've explored how accepting pain can paradoxically lead to growth, but this still leaves a big question. What is the subtle art of not giving a fuck in practice? It can't mean just being indifferent, right? Or like a psychopath.
Absolutely not. And the source is very clear on this. It clarifies things with 3 crucial subtleties.
Okay.
Subtlety, #1. Not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. Indifferent people are often actually quite scared. They're hiding because they secretly give too many fucks about what others think. They might care a lot about their appearance, so they pretend not to. They care about their ideas, so they hide behind sarcasm. The truth is, the source says, there's really no such thing as not giving a fuck about anything. It's biological. We always care about something. The critical question is, what do we choose to give a fuck about? It means being comfortable with being different, even if that means genuinely upsetting some people for the sake of your core values. The author gives this example of his mother getting screwed out of money by a friend. Instead of being indifferent, he was, indignant. He said, "No, screw that, Mom. We're going to lawyer the fuck up and go after this person. Why? Because I don't give a fuck." What he meant was he didn't care about the adversity or the conflict involved in pursuing what he felt was right.
Got it.
It's about reserving your precious, limited fucks for what truly matters. Your friends, your family, your purpose. Then there's subtlety, #2. To not give a fuck about adversity, you must first give a fuck about something more important than that adversity. Think of that image the source uses. The elderly lady screaming over a 30-cent coupon at the grocery store.
Yeah, I remember that part.
Why does she care so much about 30 cents? The source suggests maybe it's because she has nothing more genuinely fuck-worthy to dedicate her energy to. Perhaps she's lonely, Nothing truly meaningful occupying her days. So that coupon dispute becomes her entire world for that moment. So if you find yourself consistently giving way too many fucks about trivial stuff like fretting over your ex's new Instagram picture or getting really upset about dead batteries in the remote.
Guilty. Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
We all do it. But chances are, it might mean you don't have enough legitimately important things going on in your life to occupy your attention. Finding something profoundly important and meaningful is maybe the most productive use of your time and energy. Because if you don't find that, your fucks will inevitably get squandered on meaningless, frivolous causes. And this leads right into subtlety, #3. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to give a fuck about. We're definitely not born not giving a fuck it. I mean, just watch a toddler have a complete meltdown over wearing the wrong colored hat. When we're young, everything feels new, exciting, and everything seems to matter intensely. We give tons of fucks about everything. But as we get older, gain more life experience, we start to notice that most of this stuff has very little lasting impact. We naturally become more selective. And this process is essentially what the source calls maturity. It's learning not to give a fuck about the trivial. And then as we move into middle age, maybe our energy levels dip a bit, our identity solidifies, we get a clearer sense of who we are, accept ourselves more, flaws and all. We might realize, okay, I'm probably never going to cure cancer or walk on the moon, and that's genuinely okay. And we then naturally reserve our ever-dwindling fucks for the most truly fuck-worthy parts of life. Our families, our closest friends, our core values, maybe our golf swing.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. And this simplification, this deliberate letting go of the non-essential, paradoxically, is what often makes us genuinely happier on a more consistent basis. It makes you start to think, maybe that crazy alcoholic Bukowski was actually onto something. Don't try.
Okay, so after exploring all these subtleties, what does this ultimately mean for us, for you, the listener? What's the real takeaway here? The point of this book and this whole idea.
Well, this book really aims to help you think much more clearly about what you're choosing to find important and what you're choosing to find unimportant in your life. The author believes we're facing this kind of psychological epidemic, this widespread, often unconscious belief that it's simply not okay for things to suck sometimes. And when we believe that, we unconsciously start blaming ourselves. We feel like something is inherently wrong with us. And that drives all sorts of overcompensation, entitlement, and just unhealthy behaviors. This belief, in a very real way, is the source of that feedback loop from hell that seems to dominate so much of modern culture. So the idea of not giving a fuck is actually a surprisingly simple yet profound way to just reorient our expectations about life. It leads to what the author calls practical enlightenment. Now, not some airy-fairy, eternal bliss kind of enlightenment where all suffering ends. No. On the contrary, practical enlightenment is about becoming deeply comfortable with the idea that some suffering is always inevitable. That's just part of the deal. No matter what you do, life will include failures, loss, regrets, and eventually death. And once you can genuinely accept all the shit life throws at you, as the book puts it, you become, in this peculiar way, invincible in a sort of low-level spiritual way, because the only true way to overcome pain is to first learn how to bear it.
So this isn't about simply avoiding problems then. It's more about transforming our relationship with them. So what does this mean for how we actually approach our own lives day to day?
Yeah, this deep dive isn't about making your problems magically disappear. That's not the promise. It's more about turning your pain into a useful tool, turning your trauma into a source of power, and turning your overwhelming problems into just slightly better problems. That, the author contends, is real progress. Not avoiding problems, but finding better ones.
Better problems. I like that.
Right. Think of it as a guide to suffering better, suffering more meaningfully, maybe with more compassion and humility. It's a book about moving lightly despite your burdens, resting easier with your deepest fears, and maybe even finding a way to laugh at your tears while you're crying them. This book doesn't primarily teach you how to gain or achieve more. It's more about how to intelligently lose and gracefully let go, how to take inventory of your life and sort of scrub out all but the most important items, to give fewer but more discerning fucks And ultimately, to just stop trying so damn hard to be anything other than what you already authentically are.
So if that relentless pursuit of positivity paradoxically just reinforces our feeling of lack, maybe the question for you to think about is, what small negative experience could you choose to fully accept today? Not fight, not fix, just accept. And what surprising freedom might that bring?
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how often the path to genuine growth, to lasting fulfillment, isn't really about adding more stuff to our lives. It's often about artfully, strategically subtracting what doesn't genuinely matter to make crucial space for what truly deeply does.